Michael Popok with the Legal AF Hot Take. From a trial lawyer perspective and a defense lawyer perspective, I want to give you my impression of the makeup of the 12 jurors, talk a little bit about jury science for those that don't know it firsthand, and tell you what I think is ultimately going to happen with this fair and impartial jury in the trial of Donald Trump. Trump on trial, criminal trial. Donald Trump is here, with opening statements likely on Monday or Tuesday of next week. There's a lot of reporting, I know Fox News has done it, about the makeup of this jury now that we have, as we like to say in the business, 12 in the box, not yet sworn. There still could be some things that happen, and a couple of them could still be removed. But once they are sworn in, which is expected today or this week, we are going. 12 in the box, 6 alternates. The 6 alternates know they're alternates. In some jurisdictions, they don't. They do here. The 12 know that they're the 12. They're sitting in numbered chairs. In New York, chair number 1 is occupied. Whoever gets chair number 1 is the foreperson. In other jurisdictions, that decision is made at the time of deliberation by the jury at the end of a trial. Now, look, I'm going to give you my sort of running kibitzing, that's a legal term, commentary about these jurors from the perspective of somebody that has picked dozens of juries. I've done it with jury consultants. I've done it as the jury consultant effectively. I've done it without jury consultants. I've picked civil trials. I've picked criminal trials. I've picked 6-person trials, 9-person trials, and 12-person jury trials. Okay, all of it. So I'm going to give it to you from that perspective. I've also done a fair amount of study in my career about jury science because it's fascinating to me, especially since I'm on the other end and receiving end of jury decisions. I like to know about juries, and I've been this close to being on a jury, if that counts. Let me talk about each of the 12. Now, I'm not doing it in any kind of disparaging way. We don't blow smoke or sunshine here. This isn't going to be like Fox News, like, this is a liberal Democrat. Oh, this person is probably great for Trump. I'm just going to give you from what I understand from the reporting and the biographical information we have about each, which we have for this anonymous jury. No names, not even exactly where they work, but their name, rank, and serial number and profession, and where they get their news from, and where they live in the city, and I can give some commentary on that. Now, let me preface it this way. We did this already 2 years ago, picking 12 jurors against Donald Trump's organization, 2 main subsidiaries, for a criminal fraud and criminal fraudulent business record case. Sounds very similar to what's going on right now with the business record fraud election interference case up in New York right now. And we successfully, let me just compliment the New York criminal justice system and our jury system in America overall. We picked 12 fair and impartial jurors. They weren't all perfect in their commentary for either the prosecution or the defense. There were people kibitzing and pundits commenting, whether they have experience or knowledge or not, talking through their hat or not, about, well, this one lives on the Upper East Side, and this one's from Harlem, and this one's from Murray Hill, and this one's from Greenwich Village, and you know what that means. Yeah, we did all that. And eventually we stopped doing that, and the jury, anonymous, makes its decision. And I want to talk about jury decision-making and how they become a small community relatively quickly. Right now, there are 12 individuals that are elbow to elbow and have to have lunch together. But very, very soon, especially over the course of a 6 or 8 week trial, they will bond. And they will bond. I mean, not all of them. They're not all gonna like go out for lunch or go to baby showers when this whole thing is over. But there is a fair amount of bonding that goes on, and it is a little bit of us against them. Us, meaning the entire criminal justice system, which they are now a compelled part of as part of their civic duty. That they become protective over the judge. They become protective over. It depends on how they feel about the lawyers, maybe the prosecutors. If they feel the defense and Donald Trump are being unfair or disrespectful to somebody like Judge Merchan, his staff, the bailiff, the prosecutors, a woman that's involved in the case, whatever, the jury will retaliate. I'll just tell you that straight. I'll tell you what works in front of a jury, as I tell my clients who take the stand. And when I have to appear before a jury, you have to be authentic, you have to be credible, you have to be reasonable, and you have to be a truth teller. And if you tell the jury, which I do in my implicit, directions to them in opening statement, when I first meet them in the jury selection process. I basically am trying to signal to them, and so that they read on me, this is a trustworthy person that I can follow through the layers of evidence in this case to get to the finish line. And I tell them a version of that in the opening statement. Trust me, follow me. I'll be your spirit guide. I will take you till the end and put all of this disparate evidence and testimony together for you coherently in a way that makes sense. That's what you're signaling. And juries can smell a fraud, someone who's inauthentic, not credible, and not truthful a mile away, both individually and as a body collective. That's the jury. And if Donald Trump continues to do, as I said on another hot take, what he's been doing in the jury selection process, which is acting out like a toddler or a 6-month-old in a high chair, throwing his food and his feces against the wall, not being respectful to the judge, being disrespectful to the lawyers on the other side, being disrespectful to the jury by not rising and standing to honor the jury as they enter the room, they will punish him. And if he takes the stand, which I don't think he will, but if Donald Trump takes the stand and is not authentic, honest, and truthful and credible, and is that even possible at this point, given the facts, they will punish him, right? We always say in trial practice, in your opening statement, don't write checks you can't cash by the end of the case. There's going to be a lot of uncashed checks in this case by Donald Trump's side because they're not going to be able to deliver on the promises that they make to the jury. And the juries remember it. And if they don't remember it, the prosecution will remind them in the closing argument at the end of the case in 6 or 8 weeks. Let's talk about the jurors, and we'll talk a little bit about jury science on this particular hot take. Juror number 1, as I said earlier, this is basically from some really great reporting being put together by Nick Robbins early in The Guardian. I like their reporting. I think it's accurate. I've looked at some other places for people who've gotten their hands on the questionnaire and different things. I like this one. Juror number 1, who is the jury foreperson, who has been reported as originally being from Ireland. I think he's a naturalized citizen, works in sales. He had been a waiter. He has some limited college experience. He's married with no children, and he gets his news from various places, from the New York Times, the Daily Mail, even Fox News and MSNBC. Seems sort of fair and balanced in terms of the information that he takes in. He is the foreperson, and he has certain responsibilities I'll talk about. Juror number 2, we have a lot of men on this jury. It's 7 men, 5 women. Let me tell you that straight. And I'll give you some insight as to men versus women on a jury. Jury number 2 is a married man who works in investment banking. We have a few people, a couple of men that work in financial services in New York. No great surprise, being the financial capital of the world. We've got an investment banker. We've got a hedge fund guy. We got 2 male lawyers. I mean, this is a high-end New York jury in terms of experience, background, education. Not a total surprise. I've had a jury recently in federal court where every person on the jury was a college graduate and half of them had graduate degrees or more. So this is the type of New York juror that we get. Number 2 is married. He works in investment banking. He has an MBA. He said he doesn't have any strong beliefs, and he has looked at Trump's Truth Social on Twitter. He has read some of his books, including Art of the Deal. And I think he also said at one point that he got some information or listens to Michael Cohen. So you got Cohen and Trump giving him information. That's interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, that could be potentially fair and impartial. That's what you're looking for if you're both sides. Number 3 is a man. They said it looks like he's in his mid to late 20s from the West Coast. He's a lawyer. He's a corporate lawyer, not a litigator, and said that he gets his news from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Google. No MeidasTouch or Legal AF yet, but I'm still holding out hopes. Michael Cohen was close. Juror number 4 is also originally from the West Coast. He's a security engineer. He's married with children. He's not on social media. He once was in a criminal jury that could not reach a verdict. And so that's his background. Juror number 5 is our first woman. She's a young woman. She says her friends have strong opinions about Trump, but that she's not that political and she avoids the news. She does say that she appreciates Trump's candor and that he speaks his mind, and I'd rather that than someone who's in office who doesn't know what they're thinking. I think she's also been reported as an African-American woman who comes from Harlem. Number 6 is another woman, our second woman, who works in tech. She has no strong feelings about Trump. She pledged to be fair and impartial. She's unmarried with no children, and she gets her news from the New York Times, Google, Facebook, and TikTok. Number 7 is a man in his late middle age who works as a civil litigator. That's our second lawyer. We got one corporate lawyer male, one civil litigator male. He's never served on a jury. No surprise. Most lawyers find a way to get off. He gets his news from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and the Washington Post, and from podcasts. Still holding out hope for MeidasTouch and Legal AF. Number 8 is a retired wealth manager. There's our second person with financial services background in New York, married with children. He paused about whether he had strong opinions about Trump. He paused and said yes. When the judge followed up and asked him if he could be fair and impartial, he said he could, and he made it on. All right, that's interesting. Number 8. Number 9 is our third woman. She told the court she believed she could follow the court's instruction. She lives alone. She's originally from New Jersey. She's not very well versed in legal proceedings, and that's not what we know about number 9 as of right now. Remember, all these people are drawing from the Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan, for this criminal case. So they all live somewhere in Manhattan. I'll talk to you about the differences there. Number 10 is our seventh man. And he works in e-commerce. He doesn't really check the news. He listens to podcasts on behavioral psychology. We were so close to Legal AF. And he's originally from Ohio. Juror number 11 and 12 are 2 more women, which brings the total women to 5. She doesn't follow, number 11 doesn't follow the news. She likes late night comedy shows. You know what they're doing these days. She's from California. So many transplants here on the Manhattan jury. Very interesting. And said she has never rallied for or against Trump. She had a friend that was convicted of financial fraud. That's interesting. And number 12 is our fifth woman. She is a physical therapist. She's lived in a few states. She reads major news outlets, listens to podcasts about sports and faith. So I still think it's so close to having somebody say Legal AF or MeidasTouch. That would really make our day. Now, the city is also divided into, basically different neighborhoods. I know from other reporting that one of the men lives in Murray Hill. Yay, Murray Hill. That's where my law office is located. That's kind of near the Grand Central Station area for those that know New York. A number of the jurors hail from the uppermost region, the upper east side or upper west side of New York, in Spanish Harlem or Harlem. In that area, we know that has also happened. Other people in Lower Manhattan and Midtown and the like. It's very hard to tell. I know Fox News is all over. Oh, these are all liberal Democrats. I mean, I would be shocked if this is majority liberal, what we call liberal Democrats. Do I think out of the 12, the majority of them did vote Democratic? Yes, because 85% of New York voted for Biden, and it's the bluest of the blue regions. But, are there a number of people there that I'm sure are independent and or voted for Trump at one time? I am assured that they are. But what I'm here to tell you is manage expectations. Don't worry about what people's political leanings are. I will assure you that none of these people are MAGA, right? None of them have a Make America Great hat closeted somewhere, or or went to one of his rallies, or like that. At best, I don't know if these are country club Republicans, as we like to call them, or maybe never Trumper Republicans. But there's a couple of Republicans in here, especially among the financial services people. I worked in financial services. I was sort of an odd duck there in terms of my political leanings. It is overwhelmingly Republican. If you work in wealth management or you're a broker on Wall Street, you're probably more likely than not Republican. So there is a couple of Republicans in there, in that woodpile. It's okay. That is okay. I want to manage expectations. If they are going to be fair and impartial, which they said they can be, they will listen to the overwhelming amount of evidence against Donald Trump. Witnesses, they're going to come in and testify consistent with the Manhattan DA's theory of the case. Not just Stormy Daniels, not just Michael Cohen, but others that are going to lead this jury down the timeline to the right conclusion. Recorded evidence. We've got tape recordings by Michael Cohen that are going to be coming out. We've got documentary evidence, the entries in the books and records that were false about the payoff to Stormy Daniels, now being masqueraded and disguised as legal payments to Michael Cohen. We have all of that. By the time the dozen or so witnesses come in, including those that were or are close to Donald Trump, Hope Hicks, his former press secretary, who was his press secretary during the 2016 campaign, and we'll talk about her involvement in this catch and kill program to pay off Stormy Daniels and make it look like something else as part of the campaign. They don't. The Manhattan DA is so confident, they told Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer who is at the heart of this matter with Donald Trump and Michael Cohen, he could stay in jail. They don't need him as a witness. That, for me, shows a lot of bravado, shows you strength in your case. So this jury, the two lawyers, the two people in financial services, the physical therapist, the single person, all of them will now join together as a collective. Now, they can't talk about the case from now until the end. That's only for a period of time we call deliberation. Till they deliberate, after all the close of evidence, they can't pre-deliberate. When they're at lunch, they got to talk about something else. They can't, even in the hallways, the bailiff and others who are responsible for them, hurting them during the day and making sure they get home safely at night, will tell them, you can't talk about the case. What are you guys talking about? You can't talk about that. They can't be on social media about it. They can't talk about it with their friends and families when they go home. And all of that. They got to be sort of inviolate. But having said that, they're forming opinions, of course. Jury science tells us that juries make decisions about who they're going to vote for the case in the first week. And maybe after opening statements. In other words, if you were to poll the jury, if you could, after opening statements and maybe the first witness or two, and then compared that to how they actually voted at the end in deliberations, it's almost a 1-to-1 match. That's what we learned from jury science. They become, quickly though, they bond in these lunch moments, these break moments, these moments of levity which will break out with the judge. The judge is responsible, along with his staff, and in the care and feeding of these jurors to make sure they're happy as they can be. And they're content, they're well fed, they're well rested, they get breaks. If somebody's a smoker, they get outside to smoke. If somebody likes water, there's enough water. Whatever it is, the care and feeding of the jury is really, really important. I mean, this courtroom is already shabby enough. This is the worst of the courthouses in New York, by far. I thought the landlord-tenant court was worse, but my colleague Karen Friedman-Ignifilo told me, no, the criminal court is even worse than that. So that's what's going to happen. And they will bond in this moment. People will exchange, oh, you like to crochet, you like to needle, oh, you're a golfer, oh, you've been to this country, or that. Things will happen. Life will happen in the 6 or 8 weeks. There'll be a birthday. There'll be a birth. There'll be, unfortunately, a death. There'll be an accident. Something will happen. And they will bond, and they will see the judge as their boss, their God for the moment, for those 6 or 8 weeks. And when he's insulted, they're insulted. And when they're insulted, they punish the person that's insulted them. And that's what Donald Trump doesn't recognize, doesn't care about, and continues to tweet out and bash everybody indiscriminately, not understanding that the jury finds that repulsive. And they've always punished Donald Trump every time he's ever taken the stand. Worse than if he didn't take the stand. And we'll do another hot take about whether I think he's going to take the stand. That's jury science. That's what jury science tells us about this new community building that we're watching. But don't be that concerned as the trial moves on about trying to handicap. What's 2 thinking? What's 4 thinking? What's 7 thinking? I don't like 3. Why did she say that about Trump? Forget it. Let's use an Etch-a-Sketch, shake it, clean slate. Fair and impartial jury, regardless of their political leanings, regardless of their educational backgrounds, their economic backgrounds, their ethnic backgrounds, their gender, whatever. I said I would talk about men versus women. It depends on the case. I will tell you that I generally like more women in my trial than men, because women will often, and this is jury science and the psychology, will often kind of put aside all of the noise and get right to the heart of the matter in a logical fashion quicker than men. I'm not bashing men. I'm just telling you what jury science and my own experience tells you. This one is heavier men. Heavier financial services, and more lawyers than I've ever seen on a jury before. 2. Financial services, 2. That's a lot. That's a heavy weight. But we'll have to see as they process it. Interestingly, the jury foreperson is not a lawyer, right? It's the seat number 1, the Irish American person who came from Ireland who got naturalized. So anyway, we'll continue to follow what we can catch, what we can pick up. It's an anonymous jury, and we won't really know much more, but I thought this would be an interesting way to talk about jury science, this jury, and to sort of manage expectations about, don't worry about who's sitting in any one seat. This will become an instant organization, an organogram that we will be able to see the results of at the end of the 6 or 8 week trial. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF podcast, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.